and welcome to World Talks from our Brussels studio. My name is Sasha Farbach. Now, with the new incoming head of the Polish presidency in 2025, lots to discuss and talk about. Also, the conclusions of the European Council, the last one, 2024. And to help us unpack it, what happened, why it matters for the future, I'm delighted to welcome in the studio Wojciech Talko, who is a spokesperson for the Polish presidency of 2025. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello.
Now, the task is a big one. Let's jump in first into these conclusions from the summit. I mean, we have the draft that was released, a lot of topics there, but is it really anything tangible here in this? And is it enough for Poland and Europe for the future?
I think what Prime Minister Tusk said, he was very satisfied with the Council, with the European Council, with the results. I think this Council was a bit different than the previous ones, with the full support of Poland and Prime Minister Tusk. We didn't want to get engaged in drafting of these declarations with commas. We wanted to have strategic discussions among leaders about the key topics. And here, for instance, Ukraine, good discussion, where most of the leaders, 24, 25, really understanding and speaking seriously about the challenges ahead. Full support to Ukraine, very important message from Poland's Polish perspective. Nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. Mm-hmm. So I think this is this very important message ahead of any potential peace talks, security guarantees. This is the basics to avoid the mistakes from the past, also in situation in Ukraine or in European history.
Mm-hmm. I mean, President Zelensky was also in attendance. I think that was very significant. He made that plea for more unity. Didn't quite reveal too much about, you mentioned security guarantees, but there was a slight thing at the press conference that said, well, if European support in that is enough for him, he said, no, it needs the United States. Let's talk about the United States for a minute. Does Europe have that unity, you said, the 27, in order to work with whatever happens in the White House in January?
I think there are a few member states that see situation a bit different. This is not new. They've been vocal and public about it. But despite this, we manage as Europe, as the European Union, to do things, to adopt sanction packages against Russia, to provide financial support to Ukraine. So I think this is the beauty of democracy, that you have different views around the table. You have some minority views, but despite of that, you manage to find a consensus and move forward. Obviously, and this was also part of the discussion yesterday about the United States, I think we agree with President Zelensky. We need a signal from the US. How do they want to do that? But and what is it that they want? And this will be an important signal, but I think Europe has to do its homework. This is also the message from Poland. Regardless who is the resident of the White House, we have to answer ourselves important questions about Europe's ability to act in its own neighborhoods, on its own territory. And the stronger and the more united we are, the better partner we are for the US.
Mm-hmm. Well, looking also at that changing of the baton, Hungary is going to give that up now. I mean, they've certainly received their criticism for what Viktor Orban has done, let's say a little bit in the negative terrain, probably most people would say. But then again, he was praised, which I found really interesting, by Ursula von der Leyen yesterday, saying she appreciates what the Hungarians did during those 6 months. Very different tone before. Does that mean now Hungary is in a different direction, or how do you react to this as now the Poles are taking over in January?
I mean, I wouldn't read too much into this. I can also say we appreciate the efforts of Hungarian presidency. On the working level, many colleagues are professional diplomats trying to do their best, but decisions are taken in Budapest by Prime Minister Orban. This is also not a secret. And he also doesn't make a secret that he sees certain things about Ukraine, about Russia, about US, about Europe in general, very differently than majority of the leaders around the European Council table. So it's an uncomfortable position to judge my colleagues from Hungary with whom we are working and we will be working. I think our task as a presidency, it's this phrase, honest broker. So our task is to find a compromise around the table. Hungary is sitting around this table. And we will do our best to move Europe forward, keeping in mind that we are honest broker to represent the will of the 27 and seek for compromise.
Mm-hmm. I know that's the diplomatic answer, the honest broker role. That's what the council's supposed to be doing in the presidency. But I think if we already look at what we know, for instance, let's talk about 2025 in January. There's a lot of different types of things on the agenda that was very much missing from what the Hungarians did. So let's talk about that. Defense, I think, security. Tell us also how that consensus is going to be built. I mean, you're going to have a powerful, influential role right at the beginning of the year. Right. So where are these things going to pan out? What's the tangible things that you want to kick off really right from the get-go?
I think right from the get-go, it's, let's say, the big political priority of the presidency is to make Europe speak more Polish. And this is not about learning our colleagues from different countries to pronounce very difficult words with a lot of consonants, but it's about trying to show them that the risk from Russia is real, the business as usual cannot continue. And we're not in here alone. We have the Baltic countries, the Nordic states, the bombs, Russian bombs are falling 10 kilometers from our border. So this security is real, and the risk to security is real, not only for Poland, but for the entire EU. And I think this is where we want, this is what we want to achieve. We want Europe to be more united and more, in a way, understanding the point of view that has been proven now is more realistic than those sometimes romantic visions about Russia that were entertained by our colleagues more from further from the border. And this is priority number one. And of course, presidency, it's also a lot of negotiations on legislative text. We will inherit roughly 50 different legislations, including the so-called EDIP. So this is about common funding or European funding for common defense projects. And I think this will be the first time the EU would have such a legislation, and this one is an important one. But as I said, there's 50 others, so it's and they're from all other areas. Of course, we will have new ones, because we cannot forget that this is the beginning of the new Commission. They will present in the first 100 days important initiatives like white paper on defense, competitiveness compass. So all these things, how to make Europe more competitive. And here as a presidency, I think we want to guide and shape a little bit these responses so they resonate with the actual challenges that Europe has. And I think this will be a presidency of hard work, rolled up sleeves, but very realistic and pragmatic, because I think this is the diagnosis that we think people of Europe expect. So a bit less ideology and a bit more pragmatic solutions.
Mm-hmm. I know that there's some pretty ambitious plans in all this, what you've said and we've heard, and it's not a surprise. Defense is going to be one of them, building up that European defense industry, etc. That new defense commissioner, for instance. Exactly. But at the same time, still wondering about, this is also what Zelensky said yesterday, without the United States, the backup plans in this. Is Europe ready for something in defense? Is it competitiveness? If there will be a trade war, if China becomes more aggressive, if mercurial Donald Trump really does go through on his threats about tariffs, is there a backup plan? If so, can Europe do it by itself and thrive still on its own?
I mean, you've asked many questions in this. I think let's take two-step approach to this. First is the challenges that Europe faces. And here indeed, it's up to Europe to decide how Europe will look like. And we have questions to answer for ourselves, whether we want to rely on, to what extent we want to rely on countries outside the bloc, to what extent we want to be more independent. It's impossible in this globalized, connected world to be fully independent. Neither US nor China nor Europe can do it alone. So in that sense, I think, we have to see where our strategic interests are, where our vulnerabilities are, so we can actually address them, and this is the first question. Europe has to take more responsibility for its own. And if we do that, then we become much more interesting and assertive partner for others, including the US. And I think the leaders, most of the leaders, when they were talking about the relations with the US, I feel there is like a common narrative. First, let's talk, right? I mean, Mr. Trump or any other president of the US is there to guard US interests. So we have to present our offer. Look, this is what we can offer. It's mutually beneficial. We have to make our case, right? Like with partners. And US are allies and partners and will continue to be so. But if there will be a US decision to start trade frictions or any other things, I think we have plan B and C. In Europe, this is also being discussed together with the Commission, with the member states. So we are definitely much better prepared for the so-called surprises that wouldn't be surprises anymore than we were during the first presidency of Mr. Trump.
Mm-hmm. All right. So it seems that, as you said earlier, Europe has done its homework. There's lots
Part
ahead.
of it, yeah.
Part of it,
Part
but
of
it's
it.
an ongoing process, really.
Yeah.
There's much on the table, lots on the agenda, from enlargement to defense. It's going to be a really interesting one, but I think for sure that Warsaw Compass will be a positive one, hopefully, as we look forward to 2025, the first half. Wojciech Talko, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you very much for having me.
And thank you for joining us as well on this World Talks. My name is Sasha Farbach. Join us again next time on TVP World. Goodbye.